great opportunity to get the community together and talk about topics that are interesting to us.
And it's really weird because I'm used to looking at my screen, looking at you. So I'm looking at you through my screen, and then you're looking at me, and it's just too confusing out there. We haven't been together in the same room recording.
Like you need like blinders or something.
I do.
To limit
Don't look at me.
Well, this week, what we wanted to talk about was PyCon and the education role at PyCon. There's a lot of educators who are here. And the big question on our mind is, do we have enough educators at PyCon? Do we need more? How could we get them here?
100%, especially after the Education Summit. I'm not sure if any of you went to the Education Summit. No. Okay, so there we go.
Opportunity for next year.
Great opportunity for next year.
Right. So if you haven't been to PyCon before, you don't know what it is. PyCon US is the US Python Summit or conference, and it happens every year. This year it's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There are many PyCons around the world, actually, and around the country. So there's Texas, Ohio. There's just an explosion of
Berlin.
There's a new explosion of PyCons in Africa. It's a really exciting time to get together as a community and talk about the things that are important to us.
100%. And as an educator who is not really in the computer science kind of field, this has been probably my biggest personal learning network. Of coming here. Yesterday I learned what Rust was. See, I knew what a linter was now because I don't use linters, and Sean told me, because it's built in. That's why you never have to install a linter. So these are all like learning opportunities. I think as computer science teachers, especially the ones that are like me, having this community just allows you to grow more so than what you do every day.
Yeah, and this is actually our 6th PyCon. Yeah. We've been coming here since Cleveland. I think that was the first time we met Chris Williams and a bunch of other people, and it really has become now every time we come back, we have friends, we have people we know, and we can hang out with them, and it's been really fun.
Yeah, and Chris, you actually said something to me last night. You said, wow, when I first met you, you didn't really engage with the conversation, and then last night you said what?
I said that you were a lot more highly opinionated and that you stood your ground in not arguments, but like strong debates. Yeah. You had a much more nuanced and you didn't take poop from anyone.
Poop. I mean, that was because I think I wasn't confident in 2019. I didn't know what I didn't think I should be here. I didn't know what a loop was. I didn't know what conditionals were, and I was just dumbfounded by the intelligence that was surrounding. So
yeah, and I think that's one of the things that is unique about PyCon, and we'll get into this a little bit later about some of the perceived barriers to coming to a technology summit, especially when you're an educator, right? Python and the Python community and PyCon itself is pretty good about welcoming people that of all skill levels. If you just started writing Python a week ago, or even at the conference, there are other people like you that can help you out, and people who are welcoming and engaging with you. It's one of the things that I think makes it really unique and special.
100%. So benefits besides that?
I mean, for me, it's a place to get inspired, right? It's a place to learn new things. It's a place to connect with people, create the time and space to think about what we're teaching or what we're learning or what we're doing in a way that is really difficult to do in your day-to-day life.
100%. So I was thinking about the story that happened at the Education Summit. A teacher came up to me and we were discussing curriculum, and he was quite upset that his curriculum had to be cut. He had too many topics on the curriculum. And I said, what is one of your favorite topics about, in the curriculum? And he told me requests. But unfortunately, I have to cut that because it doesn't fit into my curriculum because it's not written in there. And we started talking about how request and JSON kind of looked, as like a dictionary. So they have to use that looping through the JSON and everything. And that why don't you just piggyback it up against your dictionaries and pretend that you're enhancing the dictionary unit and do requests. Because you can't have kids leaving a college course without knowing what an API is. That's in my opinion, because that's huge. And just that small little conversation, he's like, I'm going back to the curriculum board. We're putting requests back into the curriculum. And it's a good thing because, we get to share that knowledge and build better curriculum for our students.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that's really good is that it's about those connections. And a lot of those connections last and persist well after PyCon's over. Like, we're constantly chatting with people, text messages. I think we've had a 4-year long WhatsApp group chat going with Bob and Julian from PyBytes, where it might go months where it's quiet, and then we send a bunch of pictures back and forth and just say, how are you doing? And that was a relationship that started at PyCon.
Yeah, and I constantly will hit Julian up with a question, asking him little tidbits of how he uses AI and what's his thoughts on kids, because he also has children, so they're trying to get their children involved in coding. So we'll constantly share those conversations, which are nice.
Yeah. So from I guess the problem statement, the thing that you and I were talking about the other night was, this has been a wonderful experience for us. I mean, we don't want to assume that it's a wonderful experience for everyone, because everyone's experience is different. But I guess the problem statement is, do we have enough educators at PyCon? Is this a place where we should be bringing more people in and trying to share that experience with other people, right? And what does that look like? And also, I think the other thing that came up at the Education Summit was, what is the definition of an educator, right? Is it a classroom teacher? Is it someone who's an author, who writes books, who writes content? Is it the developer who's mentoring another developer and teaching them about software development processes? Like, who's considered an educator in this space?
Yeah, I always say, like, we're all teachers and we're all learners. And if you are not in a classroom teaching, you're still teaching someone, whether it be a friend or your children, and everyone has a role in that learner-teacher movement.
Yeah. So I think one of the, our assumption, or our hypothesis going into this, is that almost every single kind of educator would benefit from coming to PyCon, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter how we define it, there's a huge benefit to coming to PyCon, because this is such a place for learning. It's an incubator for learning new things and growing yourself and developing new ideas. And our philosophy has always been that as an educator, you should be trying to learn everything you can, right? Like, you should be learning all the time, constantly trying to stay one step ahead of your students to be able to teach them the new things and teach them the latest stuff.
We are not talking about Rust.
We're talking about learning and education at PyCon. Would you like to join? Perfect.
Excellent.
Pop in.
Excellent. We're on a live stream recording and our podcast. So come on in. Our topic is, we are talking about bringing in more educators and having a space for them, and whether it is a problem or not a problem that there are not a lot of educators. And so we're exploring maybe the opportunities of how do we get more educators in here if we need to, because I'm on that side where I really believe that educators need to be here. Definitely even K-12. Today, listening to Simon talk about LLMs, we have so many people out there in the educational world listening to AI consultants that don't even know code, don't even understand what an LLM is. And then they're telling teachers how to use it, and we're blindly taking it, right? And me, I know what an LLM is, but I was watching Simon taking pictures every 5 seconds. This is another great quote. This is another great quote. And I think that's a huge benefit that as an educator, we can take back to our school and share it with people that may not be teaching computer science, but still need to have those lessons.
Yeah, I agree. And I am not going to take a con position against more educators at PyCon. I fully believe that as well. I think, and this is the part that's, I think, challenging, right? Mm-hmm. There are a lot of barriers to getting educators to PyCon. First of all, we have just the cost and geography barrier, right? If PyCon's not reasonable for you to get to, it can be thousands of dollars and days of travel to get here, right? And this is the biggest one, where we probably have the best presence for educators, where there's several thousand people here. But if you look in other countries or other parts of the U.S. even, PyCons that are easy to get to might only have one or two other teachers there, right? And so finding that community that you can talk with and have that common language and discuss common challenges is difficult, right? To get there. So definitely that barrier of travel and time and budget, I think, is a big one.
Yeah, and I think there's a hidden underlying kind of guilt from educators. I've only missed 2 days of school, but at the same time, I have, emails coming in from a couple of my students saying, I have this issue on a newbie bite. The brain's turning to mush. Just kidding. That's an inside joke. And she's sending me a copy and paste into an email. I think I have an indentation error. I'm like, all I see is indentation errors. I don't know how to help you. Just put it on hold. But that if they don't have that instantaneous kind of fix feeling, they feel they're frozen, right? And they can't continue to code. And so we've now lost, I won't see her again until Monday or Tuesday. And she's lost 4 or 5 days when she was just really trying to get through some code and finish something. So I feel a guilt coming on that I've missed 2 days of school. And I think that's hard for some educators to say, okay, I'm leaving Wednesday night, even I came in at 3:30 in the morning. I'm leaving Wednesday. I'm going to miss Thursday. I'm going to miss Friday. I'm also going to miss Saturday and Sunday from my family, and then go to work on Monday, totally exhausted and still not be giving them the 100%. So it's a hard line for an educator to do to go to a conference.
Yeah, and I think that is true whether you're a classroom educator or an online educator or an author or something like that. It is a step away from what your responsibilities are, right? And there's a certain amount of like, is it worth it balancing that? And again, that's the cost, the time, the stepping away. Am I going to get more out of going to the conference than I'm taking away?
Yeah.
Right. I think the other one is probably more subtle, and a lot of it's call it the imposter syndrome or other mental and emotional barriers to coming to a conference, especially as an educator. And I think this is similar for people who are new to coding as well. It's, oh, I don't belong there. That's for developers, right? That's for people who are real Python coders, right? Mm-hmm. And I think what I've seen being here is that that's not true, but it's definitely true in people's heads, right? And they also come up with excuses that justify that because they maybe don't want to admit that they're just afraid of going, right? So they'll say things like, I really don't like the health and masking policy this year. I don't want to go because it'll be too much of a hassle. That may be partially what they feel, but it might also be masking some vulnerability or insecurity about coming here. And so, I mean, there's definitely some solutions to that. I mean, in that case, it's come with friends, right? Mm-hmm. Come with people who can make it a safe place for you, or a way to have compatriots that are with you for it, that can go to the talks with you, that can attend the education summit with you. I think that really helps to make it okay.
I just thought of this though. Also the fact that sometimes you have to write proposals for your boss in order to go to a conference. And when a boss opens up PyCon and sees its developers and things like that, and it's your first time, you don't know how to convince them that I need to be at PyCon, that can be a difficult challenge too. So you normally send people to ed tech conferences if they're in ed tech. They don't send them to an actual coding conference because they assume that the ed tech's going to allow them to get like a more general and broad conference experience, which is true. But sometimes we're broad. We're still broad here in PyCon, right? There's so many topics. So I think trying to find the way to write the proposal for the teachers can be difficult. Maybe we could help with that.
Yeah.
That would be a good one.
Well, why don't we take a pause here? Because I think this is a great place to ask, like, what kind of challenges did each of you have to come here, whether it was the time away or the financial, challenges convincing other people? Maybe just like, let's go around, introduce each other, and talk about like, was there anything that was hard about getting to PyCon this year, or something you had to overcome to be here? Matt, can we start with you?
Do you want to?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
It's not Rust.
Sure. What's difficult? I mean, time, distance, time out of the classroom is always tricky, and the initial hurdle of not just imposter syndrome, but just being a newbie in a new place. And if you're traveling alone, it's tricky to step into a new space. I mean, it's good to do, but the other thing is being here. This is my first PyCon, and I was supposed to present the Education Summit of 2020, which didn't happen. So, and then it just fell away. And I had a colleague that we were in with, and so having a colleague would have been great.
Yeah.
But it's twice as expensive and twice as much time out of the classroom. But one thing that it dispelled for me as being here is that my students could all be here.
Yeah.
They would get a ton out of this. They're, after a year or 2 years of courses in my classes, they could get a ton of this and could do a lightning talk, some of them, or even a tutorial there, which is empowering, and to see that, and also to see all the different communities that are here within PyCon, that would be really empowering for them as well too. So it's nice to see that. So I don't know if there are student grants to get students here, but I know we'll try it for. I'll get them to PyCascades next year and import them to where I'm from. So.
Nice.
And you don't have to speak if you don't want. You can pass.
So I taught myself Python. I come out of English, and so I just learned Python because I was doing an IT job for the university I was working at, or as a grad student at, and so for the first 7 or 8 years that I was doing Python, I felt like I'm not really a Python developer. It's just something I do. I'm mostly a composition guy. And then a handful of years I was just too busy to get out here. It was hard to make the time away from teaching, and so I guess this year I thought, it's like, well, I need to get out to Python eventually, and it's something I would really like to bring my technical writing students to. I'm excited about the idea of merging humanities sorts of teaching and STEM or software engineering sorts of teaching. I think there's a lot of potential, particularly at Python or with Python. And so bringing tech writing students to PyCon would be amazing. So
Yeah.
I think at PyCascades, I'm over in the Seattle area, so maybe I'll try and do that
So we got
this year.
pairing.
Yeah.
You got your partner.
I'm not in education. I'm actually an avid fan of your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I met Sean last year in Salt Lake, and then for myself, actually, I did get a travel grant. So there are grants available for me to apply. So you do need to come. It is a process. You do have to, put in an application, see why you need to come. I mean, for myself, I'm just still learning Python, and I got into data during the pandemic, and I stay at home to take care of my kids, but it really helped being able to get the grant just afford the registration, afford a hotel, and come in and be able to still keep learning. So
Nice.
Where can they get the application? Do you know?
it's actually on the PyCon website. So if you go into the PyCon, when you list to attend or come in for attending, you'll have the listing for like registration, for when we ask questions, but it will say, I think, travel grant on it. And then, you just follow the links through, and it tells you what to do. And hopefully, you're one of the lucky people that get awarded a grant.
Excellent.
So let's see. I work in higher education, academic technology, and definitely one of the barriers for coming in to PyCon, mostly just not knowing about it. I'm kind of new to the education space in general and conferences. I went to the Online Learning Consortium conference the past 2 years. It's my kind of like yearly professional development. But I think some of the imposter syndrome, for sure, of not knowing like what I would get out of it, if there would be something there for me. I would say my use of Python in general is more as a hobbyist than anything else. The only reason I kind of became more aware of it is that Canvas, the learning management system, there is a Python wrapper that a group from a school in Florida actually wrote. And I had a colleague who was willing to show me how to use the wrapper, and I was like, oh, it's not as hard as I thought. But it's nowhere in my job description. It's nowhere in like what I'm required to do. And so I was trying to figure out, like what is this to me? Is this something for me as like out of work identity? Is it part of like education? Is it part of, future learning, whatever that might be? but really glad I came. And I actually think getting the word out about the open spaces, I had no idea. I saw them all on the board and I had no idea what they were until midday yesterday. And it was just like, oh, you can just kind of, they're almost like lightning talks in that way. There's a lot of like, I don't know how to put it, but just like, if you want to talk about something, chances are there are other people here who want to talk with you about it as well. And that's pretty unique, I think, for conferences like this. So getting the word out about that as well.
We just got to read that because you have,
Oh yeah, we just got a comment that says like open spaces are a really cool idea, right? Like it really does give that energy for something new. So I completely agree.
that's Dr. Chuck.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
Dr. Chuck's here, by the way. If you
Hey,
spot,
Dr. Chuck.
everyone's saying hi, Dr. Chuck.
big fan.
His curriculum.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he learns. Yes.
Too.
Yep. There we go. A lot of learners for you, Dr. Chuck. He says hi.
So I'm actually a full-time developer, but I help teach programs. I volunteer for an organization called Black Digital Processing Association.
Nice.
And they have programs for students that help them learn application development, web development. These are weekend programs. So as far as barriers for me to come here, I think, obviously I'm in a different situation, but I think, there's always going to be some kind of barrier because, I work in Python, I work in SQL, I work in Tableau, I work in Power BI. I can't go to all the conferences, so I have to really pick and choose what's most important to me, what's going to help me with the career. And as far as the students are concerned, our programs run on Saturday. So I was very lucky this time around that, we have other people that can fill in and help out, but, it's kind of a hard, our programs only run through the school year and we're coming to the end. And so it's a hard choice to make. Should I come here or should I be volunteering and helping them wrap up their program for the year? So
I have to say something real quick. You started off with not a teacher, but as soon as you said students, your eyes lit up and glowed. So I don't know if you noticed that everyone's a teacher, and that glow back there. I don't know if you noticed you did that. That was beautiful. You saw it. Everyone saw it, didn't you? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Definitely a teacher.
Welcome. You're definitely a teacher, not full time, but still an educator. Thank you.
So I'm a very, very non-traditional educator. I'm a developer advocate for HashiCorp, but that in itself is an educational role. I go out and teach people about, all the things Terraform and whatnot. But the way that we met was because I was the evening podcast we bring on people to teach how to do the things and how so that we can all learn together and everything. So from a do we need more educators at PyCon perspective, I don't think anybody's going to argue and say, no, we absolutely do not need gatekeeping. So yeah, it's definitely something that when I first came and met both of you, I was like, oh, I do not belong here. And then now a couple of years later, you're having arguments about APIs with the guy with requests saying, no, you must have it. So yeah, no, it's definitely a great place for all of us to vibe together and learn the next new thing to pick up, like rough.
Yeah.
Rough.
Yeah.
That's
So-
rough.
So thanks everyone for sharing, because I think it really just illustrates like we all have things that we have to overcome to be here, right? And because we're in the room together, you all overcame it, right? There's probably, for each one of us, there's probably 10 people sitting at home that could be here and we get a lot out of it, right? And so the question in my mind is, okay, so now what do we do, right? What can we do to help with this? And travel grants is a great one, right? Because that removes a barrier for people. I also think the awareness, right? Like that you mentioned, Tristan, like that's a great point also. How do you even know that this conference is out there for you and that it has a strong education community that's emerging from it, right? So definitely there's an awareness problem. How do we get that better, right?
That's an easy problem maybe to fix. There are PLNs, Matt might go home, you've made a connection. So now we're gonna go maybe to a Pi Cascades and we'll bring that up. I think if everyone just told one person and then that person told somebody else, it's an easy communication fix. It's just that we don't often think about it, right? But any way that we can grow and definitely get more educators coming into computer science is a win for us. Sometimes we lose our educators to the dark side, and they, here comes Al, the biggest educator out there. Sorry, sitting in the room. But sometimes we lose educators to the developer side, and I think as developers, it's really our role to help support new teachers that come in from an English side and learn Python for the first time. So just spread the word. You can code, you can do it. You can come to PyCon and you can code in Python.
Well, I think it's also important that everyone tells their story, right? Like tell that story to other people. Yeah, I wasn't sure about going to PyCon. Was it going to be for me? But I got there and I met these people and I went to this thing and it was amazing. Like tell that story, right? Like when you make those connections, you have those moments, tell other people about it. Like make it your personal story about like why PyCon was great for you, right? The other thing I wanted to bring up also is I think for the Education Summit this year, one of the things that I think was different was that in years past, I think we tried really hard to create something that was like this, education tower within Python, right? Like that the PSF would have this like education effort and initiative, and we'd be organized and well run, and we never got to that point, right? Like there was the best of intentions, but not the best of execution, right? And so what I've seen happen over the last few years is we've gone more point to point, right? It's not like this organized monolith that we need to create. It's more like, how can I help you do what you're trying to do in your classroom? Or how can I help you do what you're trying to do with your students? Or, can I support your program for weekend education? Like, what can I do to help each other? And that kind of like democratization or the leveling of the playing field to make it more person to person, educator to educator, and sharing ideas across different approaches seems to be really working. And I'm seeing a lot of people getting excited and invigorated by it because there's that joy in helping others, right? That so many teachers have, and also the ability to enhance what you're doing and make it a little bit easier because someone's giving you a little bit of energy that can really help.
I just thought of something while you're talking, which is not abnormal sometimes, but so at the Education Summit, we had 2 lawyers come in. They're professors of law. And the one thing about another reason why it's so important to have the educators here, as they're talking, and they're lawyers. Why would lawyers want Python in their course? They were talking about the needs of being able to sift through tons and tons of information and tons of files, and the understanding of a technical side that they might need in a future case, right? So finding, as they were talking about it and how they were teaching these people who were probably afraid of math, afraid of science, afraid of computer science, teaching them Python was quite powerful. And as they're talking, I'm learning and I'm thinking new things about what I can do in my curriculum, making those connections. So another reason why we need other educators, not just Python, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of, cross curriculum, right? And cross disciplinary education is really great, right? Like that's an area where I think we have a big opportunity because Python to me has, like, since I first started learning it and to this day, still feels like the language that is the best for that sort of cross-disciplinary work, right? Because I don't have to teach people about pointers and references and things like that. Like some people can be immediately effective with a very small amount of knowledge in a discipline that's not computer science, right? And that's, I think, another barrier too. I'm an English teacher. Why would I go to a developer conference, right? Well, because there's other English teachers here and they can share ideas with you. And that's probably one of the best arguments for PyCon is that it is one of the most diverse conferences that I've seen, and that it's not all developers. It's not all people who are, writing software for the sake of software or solving software oriented problems. It's people solving a huge domain of problems, but they just haven't used Python to do it.
We had 2 new people, and would you like to say something about getting educators in at PyCon? You don't have to, you can opt out.
I'm mostly a software engineer.
Oh, that's
Sure.
okay.
So I'm mostly a software engineer. I currently have an intern that I've been trying to teach Python for a year, but of course she only spends like 2 weeks at the internship. And like I was just wondering if you guys had any like resources that y'all use to teach kids Python, because she's in high school, so.
Yeah.
Pass it down here. He will answer that for you.
Hi, I'm Alistair. Yeah, I'm just going to repeat over and over again. Yes, come to PyCon. It is an amazing conference, even if you're a beginner or you're not a developer or anything. I've been to other tech conferences before that have been kind of disappointing in that they're usually people who want to sell you things or they're vendors with a product. But PyCon and this community are so friendly and open and inclusive to people that even if you're just starting out, it may seem like an expense and investment of effort to travel out to PyCon, but it is very much worth it, I would say.
And resources, answer
Do you
the
have
question.
any advice?
The author of multiple Python books. The main one is Automated Forwarding Stuff with Python. And all of my books are released for free under a Creative Commons license at inventwithpython.com. So you can read the entire book online, check it out. And I also have several other resources that I need to update the links on my website to point towards. But yeah, Automate the Boring Stuff with Python is a book that I kind of aimed at office workers who are stuck in Excel all day and want to be able to learn just enough code so that they can write little scripts to automate some tasks that they've done. This morning's keynote by Simon Wilson had a great slide that I got a picture of. It said something like, you shouldn't need to have a computer science degree to automate tasks. And that is, I instantly thought like, oh, that's going to go on my feed pretty soon. So I snapped that photo of it. But yeah.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think one of the things that Al's books have always impressed me with is this emphasis on being productive, right? Creating value with the code that you write. And I think that's very much at the heart of what Python's all about, and maybe very useful for your intern. If you can find a way to show her that what she's doing is saving her time or doing something that she couldn't do by hand or with another method, if she starts to see the value in it for her, and it's a very personal thing for each person, like what do they think is important, or what do they think is valuable, and then using Python to help make that either go away because it's a boring task that they don't find valuable, or something that is very useful as a way to get a new insight or a new understanding of something that wasn't possible before. So if you can find those things that, and you have to listen carefully for this, what does she think is interesting? What does she think is going to be useful or effective? And how can you show her the right bits of Python that help her achieve that?
Yeah, and I always find that something simple that you can read online, especially for high schoolers, I use it in middle school, is a website from 2 college students in the UK called Mission Encodable. And I always give a shout out to Harry and Anna because they write for kids, because they are kids. And
Well, they were recently.
Yeah, now they're growing up. They're growing up. So I think sometimes when you can just give them something easy to look at first, then the other bigger projects, the ones that they'll start thinking about the things they want to automate, they want to do, and they're going to go, oh yeah, I can put that in. But it's that little background knowledge. And what I like about that for new learners is it goes into all these concepts. As a non-computer science person, I was like, oh yeah, and bits and bytes and all this other stuff and file handling. And it's just a great resource for kids.
So I think just to kind of summarize what we've been discussing here is there are a lot of barriers. Some of them are real, some of them are perceived, some of them are just real because they are perceived, right? But I think we have people in the room here that could talk to you about that and talk about the barriers that they've overcome to be here. So if you're sitting at home listening to this and you're thinking, wow, maybe I could go to PyCon, and maybe that would be something I'd be interested in, connect with us. Like, we can get you connected with other educators that have been here and found value in it and talk about it. There are resources available, travel grants. Maybe we need to come up with, like, hey, if you are finding it difficult to write a proposal for PyCon, here's
We're
a
gonna send them
sample.
to Surge.
Yeah. We'll generate something. We'll put something together. Maybe that's something Dylan's technical writing people could come up with, right? Could be fun, right? So there are things that we can do. I think the Education Summit acts as a nice focal point.
Mhm.
It's not the only thing happening at PyCon, which is great, but it's a way to say, like, I want to go because I want to attend the Education Summit. And that's dedicated for educators, whether you're a classroom teacher or a content creator, or you're an author of books, or you have an intern, right? Like, that could be a great way to bring everyone in, bring them together, and create this common thread throughout the conference.
Yeah, and if I think that's a really good entrance. If you can only get for, maybe there's something, I keep asking, maybe there's something we can do where if at least get them into the Education Summit just for that one day. That's a whole nother, maybe talk to the PSF, but the Education Summit is such a, even not that PyCon's not friendly, because it's, how can you get friendlier in PyCon? But in the Education Summit, because it's small, it's tiny, in your room, and you're in that room all day, you have the opportunity to just speak to somebody because you're sitting next to them, or you've seen them do a quick little lightning talk, or you have the birds of the feather. So it's a really nice, comfortable way. That's how we started. That's how we met. I think a lot of people, and like Nick Tollervey from Anaconda, Eric Mathis. We met all these educators at the Ed Summit. So,
yeah. So I think I wanted to just take a minute and see if anybody had any questions or any additional final thoughts they wanted to share from the room.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna follow up on your point about people who are learning code or learning Python for the first time. They look around, what sort of problem can I solve? How can I automate something to make my life easier? Excuse me. And I've heard that several times in different talks. Excuse me, sorry. But in different talks, people talk about, like, just learn what can I automate, what can I do? And so this is one of the, I think, downsides of a narrow group of people that learn to code, and the downsides or the criticisms in Silicon Valley is it's a bunch of people, it's a bunch of 20-year-olds solving the problems that 20-year-olds or 20 to 30-year-olds, 20 to 30-year-old men for the most part. And so that's the biggest argument for me for just broadening it to get as many people here with all sorts of different issues or things that are not in technology necessarily as their day job, but so they start solving their problems and solving a wider variety of problems and do good things for a wider variety of people.
Yes. Made me think of Dr. Becky.
Yep.
Dr. Becky, if you haven't followed her, she's an astrophysicist.
Yep.
Correct. And she uses Python on the side to find galaxies far, far away. So, like, wow, as a science student, wow, that's crazy. So,
and I think that's one of the other great endorsements for PyCon is the ability to connect with other people and people that maybe you wouldn't get the chance to encounter, right? I was going to make an announcement for Dr. Chuck. He's got an open space coming up this afternoon in room 315 at 4 o'clock. You can go hang out with Dr. Chuck and ask him questions about his course and learn things from him. And, like, when else do you really get that opportunity, right?
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Chuck's here, and I had a great conversation with him, and it made me giggle. And I was telling Sean about this last night. He says he's the kindergarten teacher for Python, and I was like, "No, you're not." But and then
Oh, he's like, I am.
you're Dr. Chuck. So, anyways, that was cute. But yeah, we said 30 minutes. We always talk too much.
Yep. Well, we can wrap it up here. I think this has been really just lovely to have all of you here in the room with us. It's a nice thing to be able to record, get your thoughts, your perspectives as well. I was making the comment the other day that it's always, one of the things I love about PyCon, but it's also very surprising, is that for Kelly and I, the experience is we have basically a Zoom meeting once a week that's recorded, and at the end of it, I do some work to transcribe it and clean it up, and I press a button and it changes from red to green, and then kind of like we walk away. But PyCon is when people come up to us and say, hey, I listen to your podcast all the time. I'm like, really? Right? So to be here with you in the room, having the conversation, having you be part of the conversation is special and different and really enjoyable. And so thank you all for coming, and thank you all for everyone who's joined the live stream. It's really great that you're all here, and it's a really special, unique moment for us. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very
Right.
much. It's weird having an audience. It's kind of feel like we're teaching.
Well, so for Teaching Python, this is Sean.
And this is Kelly signing off.